I'm the director of the Masters of Science in Health and Social Innovation, which is a master's degree taught in the graduate school at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. One of the things we're proud about is the degree is embedded in a facility known as the Grid, which is a 6,000 square foot incubation and co-working space in the Poppleton Hollins neighborhood of West Baltimore. It's a facility that is co-managed by two parts of the University of Maryland, Baltimore. One is the graduate school that I work for. Our partner in this space is the Office of Research and Development, which is a fancy title that most people probably know more colloquially as the biopark folks. So if you're familiar with the UMB Biopark that sits just off of Martin Luther King Boulevard on the west side of our campus, the Grid is a satellite facility of that operation that supports companies that don't necessarily need the full wet lab capabilities that the larger biopark facilities have. The life sciences program is a huge part of what happens at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. As you know, we have a world-class medical school. We also have a world-class school of pharmacy and a public health program within the medical school. The original impetus of the biopark was to support enterprises that would come out of those programs and typically work in what's known as a wet lab context, where they have actual scientific laboratories that they're building. The Grid was developed in part to support folks that didn't necessarily need that. So one of the companies that we support right now is a company called Be Well Connected Health, which is using open data health sources to try and make health records more accessible to the actual user, the patient. There's another company in that space called Armor Systems, which is actually developing what they call a life jacket for your torso, designed for use in military applications where field hospitals may not be readily accessible. Absolutely. In fact, we're actually attracting talent. One of the more interesting things that happened at the biopark recently was we just brought in a company called Kalosite, which moved here lock, stock, and barrel from St. Louis and brought several dozen employees and some very interesting patentable technology along with them. Sure. So our world is primarily focused around social innovation, which is a little bit different take on the world of the entrepreneur that says that the skills of discovery and lean startup and design thinking can be applied not just to build a company and make it economically successful, but also to build an organization that can bring about effective and sustainable social change. So the program that I run is a Masters of Science in Health and Social Innovation, where we take aspiring social entrepreneurs and incubate them through both the classroom and the facilities that are supported in the Grid to help them build social enterprises that can become financially sustainable, as well as bringing about improvements in various social conditions. In many cases, it's no longer an either-or kind of a question. Sort of 15, 20 years ago, there was a debate about whether you could be an organization that was built for profit or built for purpose. Those walls happily are crumbling down, and those issues are being more blended into one. You see this early on in efforts around corporate social responsibility, around responsible investing in the venture capital space, a bunch of other things like those, and now we're starting to see more and more companies that grow that, as you said, have multiple objectives to not just create economic wealth, but also create wealth in terms of civic and social contexts. Well, the space itself is quite a statement, considering that we are one of the points on the spear for UMB's community engagement project. We are embedded in the neighborhood. We're 2 blocks from Hollins Market. We are a block from the Poppleton neighborhood, which is one of the largest pockets of poverty in the city. So we think our presence there just says a lot just in physically being there. We also have a new community engagement center that's coming online across the street from us. But we are continuing to grow companies internally, as I mentioned, a few that are already there. We just launched our first student cohort, so it's a little early to say what the student successes are going to be, but I can tell you, listening to the conversations that we're having, there's just going to be some interesting things coming down the road in another year or two from those folks. So again, my world is social innovation. Okay, so the place that I feel comfortable talking about things from an expertise standpoint is the place where, as I said, an entrepreneur can use entrepreneurship not just to build wealth, but to build social good and improve society. So to that end, I will say to you that, in my opinion, you couldn't ask for a better place to try and create that ecosystem than Baltimore. And there are great examples of that already happening outside of our program. If you look at things that are going on at the Impact Hub, if you look at the Conscious Ventures Lab, if you look at the Johns Hopkins Social Innovation Lab, there is a growing ecosystem of social innovators in Baltimore. And I think that comes from several reasons. One is that we have a higher than average percentage of smart people here. We have in this region a much higher percentage of people holding advanced doctorates than most parts of the country. There is significant capital in this area. It's quiet capital. It's not like New York where it walks around flashing its diamonds and furs, but it's here. We have a higher than average percentage of people that are already working on social benefit organizations. If you look at nonprofits in terms of the percentage of GDP in the region, in Baltimore it's 12, in most other cities it's 8 or 7. So we already have a strong base here. And then we've got a network that's big enough that you can access it, but also small enough that you can maintain relationships. And then last but not least, as you obviously know from reading the paper any day, we've got more than our share of deeply entrenched social problems. So when you put all that together, I think it's a really great hotbed for social innovation, and you can see that growing already, and we'd like to think that we can be a part of that.